When should you make a portfolio? In the title, the answer is now. And I get it. You might think your portfolio is trash. You might not think that you have any skills to pay the bills. You think that your work is too amateurish, too beginner, um, terrible, the worst thing that's ever been shown to mankind. And all of this might be true. But the reality is that you won't be able to know what is good or bad with your portfolio until you've actually tried to make one. This idea of like, you know, I'll make a portfolio when I'm good has a flaw, which is how do you know when you're good? You know? It's not one of those things that I think people imagine it would be, where one day you're just drawing and you're making great work, or sorry, great progress, and then one day you are communicated that you have done it, you've made the great portfolio. This thing that you're kind of waiting for really never comes. Like the day in which you feel that you are a competent artist just generally does never or doesn't really come. It just happens, and you kind of just realize you were good. you know? Let me give you an example. So when I was in school, like I obviously knew that I wasn't good enough, right? Because I was just starting out. And then I would go to events, and I remember I would just sit in the student line because I was technically a student. And then one time I went to one of these events and I saw again the student line and the professional line, and I would just wait in the student line for a little bit. But then I saw the professional line was pretty much empty. Maybe like one or two people were there, where the student line was like out the door, it felt like. And so then I realized, well, shoot, I'm just going to go over there and I'm going to posture as if I am a professional because I think, if I'm not, the worst case scenario is they'll just look at my portfolio and kind of be confused why I'm even in here. They'll probably give me some good feedback, and then I'll just take that with me. You know, win-win. Because if they give me an opportunity, then it's like awesome. So then I go into the professional line. Stand in there, and then eventually I get through, and the guy starts reviewing my portfolio, but it's talking to me as if I'm a professional. He's like, "Oh man, this is pretty cool. Like, we're not really looking for stuff like this. Like, what we're actually looking for is like more like this." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Can you walk me through what I could do to add more pieces that I think you guys would be more excited about?" And he's like, yeah. Like, we're more like this style. But what he wasn't doing was like, you need to practice this. You need to train this. You need to do like kind of what a student portfolio would typically, inspire from a recruiter to talk about. They would talk about what you should improve upon versus what you should build in your portfolio. And I thought that was incredibly fascinating. Just the premise of just acting like a professional. People treated me like one. And then that event, by the way, I ended up getting an opportunity. I kept on doing that, and I actually got an opportunity. I didn't take the opportunity. It was a little bit too much for me. It's too much of a change for me at the time to take, but it was an opportunity. And then shortly after, I did get a job. Um, the other reality, another example of like not knowing that I was professional or that I was skilled. So I started applying for jobs, and I started to, try to get into a studio. And eventually I did. I got into Sony Santa Monica, which was one of the best studios I worked for. And it was great. It was a great experience. And I went there, and it was great. And the whole time, though, I felt like I wasn't really supposed to be there. Like I kind of got lucky. And so I was just like working my butt off. I remember later, one of my colleagues told me how they were trying to keep up because I was drawing so much and so often that they were actually like, dude, this guy needs to chill. Like he needs to like, slow down the pace. It's making us all look bad. Yeah, he told me later, like it kind of bothered him. And I was like, what? I was just trying to like try to make a name for myself. I felt like I didn't belong. And he's like, yeah, I know. It was just at the time I was like, who is this young guy trying to show us up, you know? And but that was again not me trying to flex. That was me trying to survive. At least that was my perspective at the time. And I remember like a few months into working at Sony that I was like, wait a minute. Like I'm doing it. I'm doing the job. I'm sitting here, I'm getting reviewed by my art director, game director. They're really happy with a lot of the stuff I've been giving them. I've been giving some insight on what I think we can do, and they're like listening, and I'm just like, wait a minute. Am I a professional now? Like, is this what this feels like? And it was like one of those things that made me realize, like, yeah, you just don't know. Like, even though I was working at Sony Santa Monica and technically a professional, um, it's only been a few months, and I felt like I actually deserved to be there, but it took a while. And what I'm trying to say here too is, which is interesting, is that maybe I was already good enough a few months even before I worked at Sony. I mean, obviously I was given the opportunity, but I wasn't like incredibly better in a matter of like 6 to 7 months, you know, a few months before and the few months after, you know, like I was definitely getting better, but not like leaps and bounds better over a span of 6 months. So question I then would ask is like, did that mean that I was pretty good to work in the industry even before then? Like maybe a year or two ago. Or maybe it was just perfectly at the 6 month mark. You know, I don't know. I don't know. I do not know. I look at the work that I had at the time when I got that opportunity, and I would just assume that it wasn't ready yet. And so this idea that I think a lot of people are like, when should I build a portfolio? When is my portfolio good enough? And my answer is you should build a portfolio now, and you're good enough now, is not to say that you actually are ready to work in every studio on this planet, but you'll be surprised at what studios will give you a shot. And the ones that won't give you a shot, you'll be surprised at kind of the advice they give you now that they're treating you more professionally. And many of you guys will be like, you know, I put my work out there quite a lot, and I still haven't got any opportunities. And in another video, I talked about how there's only two things you can control anyway, right? You can only control the quality of your work. I don't like the way this arm is positioned. Let's do this. Let's change it. You can control the quality of your work and letting people know you have quality work. That's it. You can't really control much else, you know? So if you're putting your artwork out there and you're not really getting any bites, there's a lot of reasons why, you know? Could be because the industry is having a hard time and they're just not, they're on like hiring freeze. It could be that you would be perfect, but there's just no room for you because they already have a filled seat, you know? It could be because, probably one of the more obvious reasons, you're just not ready. You are just not good enough. But building a portfolio, putting it out there, and recognizing that a lot of these things could be true is only truly revealed to you as you begin to build it out, as you begin to show it to people. Then you'll get a response or no response, which is still information, which is still data in which you can work with. You can ask yourself more questions. You know, you can ask yourself, what else can I do? But if you're sitting there in stagnation, waiting for somebody else to tell you that you're good enough, whether that's through validation from a job, whether that's validation from your peers, that one I think is just super flimsy. And I think what actually catches a lot of people off guard, because I think what ends up happening is people will graduate from a school or they'll finish a program, and the assumption is now you're ready because you've kind of got certified, right? You went through some sort of certification, certification, what the certification, and but the reality is that's all subjective sometimes. Like sometimes it's also just a strategy of the school or the platform in which you're going through to kind of just say, yeah, you've done the bare minimum, and now you're essentially allowed to graduate. But technically, you're not good enough. Like I had plenty of friends who graduated from the school that we went to, but it was obvious to me and everyone else that they just weren't clearly close to being good enough. But they graduated because the school's like, I mean, you did the 4 years, you got enough of a good grade to consider yourself somebody who actually deserves to graduate. But in reality, it's like, portfolios is what gets you gigs, good portfolios, and letting people know that you have them. Just graduating from a school alone isn't enough to give you access to this, you know, give you access to like employment. And yeah, it's just fascinating to me that people are kind of worried that if they have a bad portfolio, that there's something inherently wrong with having a bad portfolio. There isn't. You just won't get jobs. A bad portfolio means people ignore you. That's it. It's the opposite of what you might think. People aren't paying attention. They're not being like, oh man, this person's super awful. Let's blacklist them from the industry so that they never have a shot. Like that's never the case. You know what I mean? You are just going to be ignored. And you know this for sure from your perspective. Like think about all the artists that you just skipped past that just weren't doing anything for you. No hard feelings against them, right? Like you weren't like actively being malicious and negative towards their work. You just saw it and moved on. You're like, yeah, okay, you know. And if you did stop to look and to leave a comment to give some feedback, great. But even that you probably didn't do. You probably just moved on with your life, you know. And if you are the person that like stopped to give some grief to this person, then you're obviously an asshole, right? That's not nice. What are you doing? You know. And so if you really think about it, it's like the worst thing that can happen from a bad portfolio is most people just ignore it. It's typically the most likely thing to happen. The best case scenario, small indie studio that may not have the biggest budget. They have like a shoestring budget. They're like, hey, we want to look for some up and coming people because we can only afford as much. And this person we just found like has some pretty cool ideas, and it might be worth a shot. It might be worth giving them a shot and see if that's something we can do. And you might take that opportunity, you do the gig, and you got some more experience, and you were able to work at some capacity with another person giving you feedback. And that's huge. And I think that a lot of folks are expecting a lot more like clarity and like validation for when they are actually ready to work. When in reality, it's just the work will let that happen. People will find you, just think about like this streak of YouTube videos that I've been doing. It's the same thing's going to happen to me, where in time, I'm sure this channel will grow. I mean, it's steadily growing. And even if it's growing at the pace that it's growing now, within the end of the year, there's a good chance that I can get close to 100K subscribers. And I'm very excited for that. I just got to 5,600, which is huge. I'm like, oh, nice. I got like or 56,000, I'm sorry. And that's really cool. It's very exciting to me. And as I make more video content, I'm reading the comments. I'm reading what people are responding to. I'm looking at the analytics, and I'm like, okay, like I like this content too that I made. So maybe I will make more of this content and see how people feel about it. That's essentially how I'm navigating it. It's the same way that I make art. I make artwork that I like, but I pay attention to what people like about my artwork. So that way I'm still staying true to who I am. but also trying to improve, looking at positive reinforcement, looking at what people are responding well to. You know, there is absolutely some negative responses to some of the videos I've made, and I pay attention to that as well. I'm like, okay, let me think about what that means to me, because any kind of criticism and feedback is inherently useful. Like it's almost always very useful. It's just about how you interpret that information, how you um, understand that information, and then pass that outwards to your work. And so for me, it's the same as when I built my portfolio. I would go to conventions, I would go to events. In fact, I talked to my buddy just the other week about what he's been up to with his toy stuff, and he was just keeping me up to date, and it was really great. And what was really cool is that was the guy who gave me my first real job in the entire business of what I do now. Like, he gave me my first like freelance gig, and it was for Hasbro, and it was really cool. I am very grateful, and I keep in touch with the guy, and we talk periodically, and it's really awesome. And what I'm trying to get across here is that all I did is go to Comic-Con. He happened to be there. I showed him some paintings I did. And again, I didn't really have a portfolio. I just had like some paintings of like demons and monsters. And he was like, "Oh, this is tight." And then he got my contact information. He gave me an opportunity, and I took it, and it worked out. It was really cool, and it was really exciting to me that I was able to do some work. But I didn't. I absolutely at the time didn't feel like I was like a senior level or advanced level. I mean, for sure I wasn't, but I didn't feel like I was even like at a intermediate level professional. I was just like grateful I even had a job. And so if you're on the fence of whether you should be building a portfolio, hopefully this has convinced you should start doing that now. Sharing it as often as you can with people that are willing to take a look at it. If there are events near you, you should absolutely take a look at those events. You should absolutely see if you can travel to places that it might be pricey, but maybe if you put a bit of a budget aside to save so you can go to these events, it's generally worth it. Even if the only thing you can get out of it is incredible feedback and contacts with people of the business. And that's huge. Again, remember, letting people know you have quality work is just as important as letting people know that you have work at all, right? Like, you want to be very good, absolutely, but you want to let people know that you have something to show. Anyway, did this little painting of this. It's like some weird alien T-Rex looking bounty hunter. Let's add some more personality to this. Let's add like a little sash here. Yeah, I've been getting back into 3D too. Maybe the next video I'll try to do some more 3D. And it's interesting, somebody just sent me an artist named Josh Tiefer. I don't know how to say his last name. Sent me his 3D code stuff. I was watching and I was like, damn, is the universe like reading my mind? Like, it's an incredible tutorial. You guys should check it out. Um, Perhaps I'll leave the tutorial in the link if I can find it. If not, if you just go to my Instagram right now, if you're watching this video as of now, like the day that I did it, if the link's not provided, you should just go to my Instagram. I share cool stuff there pretty often, not just of myself, but also of other artists that I try to support. Anyway, I think this is good enough. Oh, you know what? No, no, no. Let's do this. Let's put some smiley face and some hearts and like maybe a house. Maybe this is like a bounty hunter who has like kids and they're like drawing on their thing. Like they were drawing on their armor when they weren't looking. All right, this should be fine. That's fun. I like that. I remember one time my daughter drew on one of my son's toys, and I got mad at her because I was telling her that can't be just drawing on people's stuff without their permission. And I said it's the permission part that matters. So if you want to draw something, ask me if you can draw on, I don't know, like my guitar. She said, "What? Can I draw on your guitar?" And I said, "Yeah, go for it." I gave her a Sharpie and she started drawing on my guitar. And I was again explaining the problem wasn't that she was drawing on stuff. The problem was that she was drawing on stuff without permission. And her brother was upset at the moment, but then when he saw that she was drawing, she's like, "Can I draw on your guitar?" I was like, "Yeah, of course." So they both did, and it was really nice. So this kind of reminded me of that moment in my life. So it's a little touching. I like it. I'm into it. But anyway, I'm gonna stop the painting here. Hope this helps y'all. Looking forward to seeing tons of portfolios all of a sudden spawn in the next few weeks. Cheers.